Hey guys, what's growing? It's Heather at Bush Poppy Farm. Hope you guys are doing well today. I am out at the farm for the first time in about 2 weeks. I'm here to check on things, but also to do a couple of things. I have a bunch of seeds I need to direct sow, and we are going to take soil samples. So it's great to be back out here. It feels like it's been a long time, and it kind of has. Between the rains and the illness that went through our house, it's been a while since I've been out here. Today it's a nice warm day. It's like 54 degrees Fahrenheit and it's breezy. It's sunny, so today is a good day to get some work done out here and not have to worry about the weather. So like I said, I've got a bunch of seeds to start, direct sown, and these are going to go in the high tunnel in parts of the beds that are not yet planted. So what am I starting? I'm starting Nigella, which is also known as Love in a Mist. I have African Bride and the Albion mix. These are really important for my bouquet work. They're beautiful flowers, and they have multiple stages of harvest. So everything from the fresh flower to the seed pod is excellent in flower arrangements. I am also starting some poppies here. Oh well, here's another Nigella, but this is what they look like. This one's called Midnight. So that's going to go in there with the other ones. And then I've got some poppies that I'm starting. This one is called Hens and Chicks and Giant Rattle. Now, Giant Rattle, also known as Giant Poppy Pod, we don't grow this for the flower. The flower itself only lasts for about 24 hours. What we grow it for is that huge green pod, and those last for quite a while. They look good green and they look good brown in arrangements. They're really cool. And each one of those pods has thousands and thousands of seeds in it. So once you grow them successfully the first time, you can save seed and you never have to buy the seed again. And then Amazing Gray poppy. Now I have had zero luck with poppies. Well, not zero. I have been able to grow some of the giant poppy pods before, but I've had very little luck with the rest, and they're very sensitive to root disturbance. So I do know some people who start them in soil blocks or seed trays and then transplant them out, but I haven't had success with that, so I'm gonna try direct sowing again this year and see if that takes. Also starting Agrostemma corn cockle. I have a mixed colors, Purple Queen and Ocean Pearl. Now these I already had planted in the home garden from seedlings. I started them in soil blocks in the fall and had planted them out, but they got eaten by birds. So I'm gonna start them here in the high tunnel, direct sow. They do just fine direct sown. So we'll be doing that. And then the last ones I'm gonna sow are Bells of Ireland. Here's a picture for you. So I have some of these started in soil blocks at home, but I wanted to also direct sow. They kind of do better direct sown, but I've also not had a good luck with germination with them. They can be really tough to germinate. So I'm doing both to kind of head it off at the pass. So let's go get those seeds sown, and then we'll move on to soil samples, and I'll tell you all about how I'm gonna do that. Here we are inside the high tunnel. I have so much to show you. First, I'm gonna start with where I'm gonna put these seeds, and then we'll go look at some fun stuff. Okay, so this part of bed 1 is empty. I did put some seedlings in here, but I think they just died. I mean, there's a few that are okay, but I'm not gonna worry about that. Gonna get rid of them, the few that are left. They're gonna come up and I'm gonna direct sow. This is a nice long swath of about 15 feet that I can get all of those direct sown. Tulips are coming up. This is the Black Parrot variety. Right behind that is Blushing Appledorn, then Valdivia, and Apricot Impression. And look at this, you guys. First flower of the season. It is a tulip. It is Apricot Impression. Now, these stems are pretty short. I'm not gonna worry too much about that, but this is actually just a little bit beyond the stage that you wanna pick tulips if you want them to last. So normally you wanna do it at cracking bud stage, which is basically when they're kind of like this and the bud is just starting to crack and you can just start to see color. But these are still good. Like here's another one getting ready to start. These are still good, they're just short. And that could have to do with potentially it's too warm in here for them. I mean, who knows, we'll find out. So this variety is Snow Crystal. We've got some Queen of the Night coming up, Pink Star starting to come up, Accabono are coming up, and Dordogne. So that's really exciting. And then we have all the ranunculus. They're looking amazing. I mean, so much growth. Look at those over there. So much growth. Now, I'm gonna look through here and see if I see any buds. These are mixed variety as well as iceberg white. Yeah, look at these, they're just doing so great. And you can tell they're mixed. Look at all the different leaf varieties and stuff. And there's some blush colors on these leaves. They do need fertilization. So before I leave today, I'm gonna come in here and give them fish emulsion foliar spray, foliar feed. But yeah, they're looking great. And I'm gonna come in also and grab some of these. I mean, it's just here and there, little bits of grass, but I don't wanna let that stuff get a foothold, and especially as these plants get taller, I won't be able to see the grass and then the grass could go to seed. Definitely don't want that, but yeah, looking really good. Here's another bit of grass that needs to come out. Yep, this is great. Here's another empty spot bed space that I could direct sow some stuff if I have additional, or I can save it for some seedlings. There are some seedlings in here, like that is status, but as you can see, they're tiny and they're not doing much. So if I have seedlings at home that are ready to go in the ground, then I'm gonna save this spot, this bed space for them. More ranunculus. These are the mix and the iceberg as well. Just looking fabulous. I don't see any flower buds yet, but it is only the first week of February, so that's not surprising. They're just looking so great. Okay, and then back here, we have some seedlings. Things that I planted here just didn't really take very well, so I'm gonna leave this bed space to use for something else. However, this is feverfew, and it's doing fine. It will remain here. I'm not gonna pull that up. This is Starflower. That's doing fine. I mean, they're small, but remember, it's been going down in the 20s at night, so not surprising. This looks like Daucus. That's doing fine. I do need to come in here and pull a few weeds, but you can see there's not a lot of weed growth in here. If you keep on top of it, then it's never really becomes a problem. All right, and then this is Strawflower. But the rest of this bed from about here all the way up is empty because I'm gonna do a dianthus trial this year. I haven't grown dianthus before, not in any large number. So this bed space is reserved for them. And since I'm giving you an impromptu tour, let's go ahead and look at some of the other things. And this will also help me make a mental note of the things I need to do for the rest of the week out here. The daffodils are starting to come up in the birdies' beds. Yeah. Some of these are the multi-stem, multi-petal, multi-flowers on each stem. So there's a nice mix in here of different varieties. There's a mix of varieties in these pots as well, but they haven't come up yet. And then over here in the newer bed, you can see all the daffodils coming up. Now these are not weeds. Those are yarrow. These are wildflower seeds that I sowed. Now this is a weed. This is, and you know, the only thing that makes it a weed is that I don't want it there. This is just grass. So I'll go back through here and do some more weeding and pull this stuff out. There's going to be grass coming up in here anyway for a while because I put this bed on top of grass. But all these other things are actually from wildflower seedlings that I sowed over top. So we want those here. So we've got California poppy in here, a whole variety of native California wildflowers. And then we also have some solidago, which I don't know if it survived. I can't really tell. I do see some other weeds that I need to come in here and hand pull, but all this stuff in the front of the bed is doing great. So that's fine because, oh, well, here we go. Here's some solidago. I see it right there among the grass. But my other plan is I'm going to be putting sweet peas along this fence line here and letting them crawl up the fence. So it's not a big problem that there's not a whole lot along the back. And then of course, still more California poppy, and this is another bunch of yarrow over here. So this will be really filling in this year, and I'm looking forward to that. This bed needs major clean out. You can see the daffodils are coming up. The Gaillardia have finally bit the dust. They're perennials, they'll come back. And also that big Russian sage behind there. All of these just need to be cut back nearly to the ground, and then they'll start giving me a fresh growth for the season. So I just gotta come in here and do all this cleanup. Not a problem. This is what I have to do at home too. And you can see the squirrels dug up these daffodils, but then didn't eat them because they realized, oh, they're daffodils and they're poisonous. So they're blooming anyway. So yeah, so lots of cleanup here that needs to be done. Totally expected in late winter, early spring. So in here, everything's going to get cut back. This was all basil and stuff, which is an annual anyway, so that'll all get pulled out. The borage, though, look at that. Doesn't care that it's been going down in the 20s and 30s at night. It's so pretty. But this is wonderful because, and I need to check on them, this provides an early source of food for bees. On warmer days when they come out, this gives them something to eat. So yeah, all this just needs to get cleaned up and pulled, and we've got daffodils coming up everywhere. This is Craspedia from last year, which apparently likes the cold. It's doing really well right there. Calendula, which doesn't ever mind the cold either. This bed I cleared out a while ago. I had a video on that. Need to come back in and with the hoe and weed again before I plant. But it's calendula along the back row. All of that needs to get kind of trimmed up. And the other nice thing about waiting, once we've had multiple frosts, is that you can see this back bed that desperately needs to be weeded is a lot more open and clear now. It's going to be way easier to get in there and weed. So yeah, all of that needs to get done. This is multi-days of work, but again, super satisfying work once it's done. So that's what's on tap for the rest of this week. Get this stuff all cleared up so that I can start getting compost added to it and bringing in seedlings once they are ready to go in the ground. I've literally just wasted like half an hour trying to troubleshoot an irrigation problem we're having. It's not really the irrigation that's the issue, it's the freaking well and the switch. There's plenty of water in the well. Anyway, I can't fix it right now, but that's a bummer because I'd like to water in here. But I did fertilize everything in here in the high tunnel with fish emulsion and kelp, so it smells real lovely in here right now. But now I'm going to take soil samples. So soil samples can tell you a lot of things. They can tell you basic things like what the pH is of your soil, how much nitrogen and potassium and potash you have in your soil, how much organic matter, what the percentage is. But it also can tell you really important things like all of the micronutrients and microelements that we don't often hear about that are necessary for plant growth and how they exist in your soil. And so a soil test will also give you like ratios of where you should be, and usually they'll tell you how to get there. So I like to do soil samples usually just once a year, and it's usually in the fall, because if I do a soil test in September, that is the end of my growing season, so I will have used up a lot of the nutrients that are in the soil during the growing season, and I'm getting ready to make my beds for the October fall planting for spring stuff. So it's a perfect time to find out what I need, and then I can add it to the beds when I'm putting down compost and preparing the beds for fall planting. So normally I do it in the fall, but this year I'm doing things a little bit differently. So I'm doing a spring one this year, and I'll do it again in the fall because I never tested the soil over here in the high tunnel area. This area was still under high grass when I did my soil test, the first soil test I did out here. The only place I tested the soil out here last time, or for my first season here, was on the upper beds. So I'm gonna do those again. Since I did have a bit of a growing season, even though the deer ate a lot of stuff, things did grow there and use nutrients. So I'll test there. I'm going to test the high tunnels, and then I'm going to test my home garden beds because I've been growing in them for many, many seasons. And even though I add things to them each time I make the beds, it's been a while since I've done a soil test there. And because I'm going to plant some stuff for spring and summer, I would like to know what I need to add in terms of amendments to that soil. The first soil test I ever did at home showed just how terrible that soil was. High clay, very high clay, and not very many minerals. So over time it has dramatically improved. My first growing season out there wasn't so great, but it got immensely better the following years because of amendments I put in based on what the soil test told me. So I use a company called Logan Labs. There are lots of different companies out there. Your extension office, your county extension office, should be able to tell you some local ones. I use Logan Labs because it was recommended to me by a regenerative gardener who I follow and do a lot of his things. And I really like the breakdown that it gives you, and I'll show you what last year's results towards the end of this video, so you know what I'll be getting in the future. And so my advice is find a soil company, a soil testing lab. Even if you buy some of those online kits, you could totally do that. There's plenty of great companies out there where they'll send you a box that you can put your soil test in and ship back off to them, and they'll upload a report for you on their website. Those are fine too. Just find something you like and stick with it, because it is sometimes tough to read across multiple different labs result reports. So if you have something that's standardized for you and you know what to look for then every year, and it's coming from the same lab, it just makes things a lot easier. All right, so how do you take a soil sample? Well, let me show you. So you want a trowel or a spoon or something, and a bucket or some kind of tray where you can mix. You're gonna take your samples from multiple places in an area that you are testing. You don't want it all to come from the same spot, because, as you can imagine, things can differ from spot to spot. So if you get a sampling from across the area that you're testing, and in my case, I'm calling this high tunnel. That was what the lab will label it, because I've labeled it that way on the sample that I'm sending in. It will be sampled from around the beds and then mixed all together, and that will give you an overall picture of the area. So it's real simple. what you want to do is, if you have stuff on top of the soil surface, if you have like leaves and stuff like that, you want to scrape that away. Okay. And I'm doing this in the growing bed because I want to know what my plants are growing in. Now we want to go down kind of deep. We're going down at least 6 inches because you want to get not only the stuff on the surface, you know, obviously that's compost, but I want to know what the native soil looks like. I'm going to put this in my tray because, you know, I can get the compost components from the company that I get my compost from. I don't need to have soil test of that. What I want to know is, where are the roots of the plants going to go? Okay, so that's my first hole. And now I'm just going to get multiple other ones at various places in the high tunnel. So now I have my samples from multiple places in the high tunnel in this tray. It's wet. Okay, so I'm going to mix it all up so it's all blended together. And then I'm gonna spread it out in this tray so it can dry out a bit. And in a couple days, I'll come back and bag it up. Now each lab is gonna have different rules for how they want you to send in their sample. This is the one for Logan Labs. You could just print it up. And then I have a sheet here that I fill out that tells them, you know, my address and all that kind of stuff. And then the report format, how many samples I'm sending in. So I'm sending in a home garden sample, a high tunnel sample, and an upper field sample, which we're gonna go take in a minute. And then I send this to them with 2 cups of soil from each testing spot in their own bag. So here's the bag for high tunnel. It's a paper bag. So I will put this bag with that tray, and when the soil dries out a bit, I'll send it. Otherwise, it's just gonna arrive to them in a mushy mess. Something else to keep in mind, when you're collecting your soil sample, use a ceramic or a plastic container. You don't wanna use a metal container to collect that because it can actually impact your the readings of your soil because whatever that metal is made of can end up skewing what's in your soil sample. So now we're gonna go collect for the upper field, and I'm very curious because that field has been covered with a silage tarp since October. So I'm hoping that all of the biomass that we cut down and left on top of the beds intentionally has started to break down. Now it's been cold you know, it won't break down as fast as it would, say, during the summertime when the sun is beating down on it, but it should have broken down some and added some nutrition to the soil. So let's go take a look and see what it looks like. Wow, so far so good. So it looks like a clean bed top. That has all degraded, all the biomass that we left on top, and now we have a bed that's pretty much ready to plant into. However, based on what the soil test tells me, I'll be adding some amendments to these bed tops before I plant for summer. So we're just gonna do the same thing we did before. Now the ground up here, whew, a lot harder. Oh, no, it's not so bad. It's just that I hit a rock. All right. I'm gonna fill this bucket and we'll pull back the tarp in a couple more places and get a representative sample across the area. Okay, but I am going to put the tarp back because I'm not ready to uncover these beds yet. So of course my battery died while I was trying to show you guys the soil inside that bucket. But the soil up first, if you hear water running in the background, it's the spillway for our pool. So it'll come on and off probably while I'm filming. But so that soil looks amazing. I didn't pull the whole tarp off, obviously, but I pulled it up in many spaces, and pretty much all the biomass has broken down into soil, which means it's going to soak into the ground because of the earthworms and the other biology in the soil is going to bring that down into the soil to help feed it and grow it so that plants will be happy there. That makes me so, so happy. So doing that is kind of the same thing as if I was able to do a cover crop. You want to keep things growing in the soil all the time. And if you can't do that, then it should be resting under cover with biomass on top of it so that it can still be being fed. So I didn't plant a cover crop there because we were doing all kinds of infrastructure work. Instead, we chopped down everything that was in those beds, everything that the deer got, and laid all the material directly on top of the beds. And then we covered the entire field in a silage tarp and weighted it down. One thing that would have been smarter is that I should have wet down everything first before covering it with the silage tarp, but it's still fine. Those tarps are 100% blackout, so there's no light getting to anything under there. So when I pull that off, there will be nothing green growing. But they also don't let water through. So, I pulled up all the irrigation prior, but next time I do that, I will wet down the soil really well, wet down the biomass that I have on top of those beds really well before I cover them. However, I don't know if I'll be doing that again, just because it ties up a bed. Now that was fine this year because of all the craziness that happened with the farm. But had I not gone through the whole thing in October with this, potential sale, then I actually would have planted that bed. And so instead, doing a cover crop would have been a better idea, which would be that you could grow something that here I can't do a winter kill cover crop because I can't do winter kill cover crops here because it doesn't get cold enough for long enough. A handful of nights in the 20s and then back up in the 30s and then back in the 20s. It's just not enough to winter kill those cover crops. So here, anything that I would plant as a cover crop, I would have to chop down, again, keep the biomass on the bed tops, let that rot in place. And you can plant directly into it if you want to, but it's better if you let it kind of decompose in place for a little while. So I may be able to do some cover cropping out there. It just depends, because with only a few beds, everything really needs to be in production. It'd be different if I had 50 or 60 beds and I could put, cycle through. Well, these 10 beds get cover cropped because when they're cover cropped, then they're out of production. Okay, so what was in that bucket was very healthy looking soil, lots of mycorrhizal fungi. I could see it. It was the white filament stuff that was in there, and it was drier, obviously, because it's not been sitting in the rain. So that and the other tray are still out at the farm. The tray from the high tunnel is going to need a couple of days, at least, maybe a week. At least it's in the greenhouse where it's much warmer, but it needs to dry out enough that I can put it in a bag to send off to Logan Labs. So speaking of Logan Labs, I wanted to show you what a report from them looks like, and I've got notes written all over this. But this is the report that I got from them from the last time I did soil testing with them. That upper field I tested the beginning of last season. I hadn't put anything on it, no compost, no nothing. So I was excited to get this report because it actually made me feel like, oh, the soil is actually pretty good out here. The pH out there is 7.4, which is much better than my 8.6 that I have here at my house. That's crazy. So 7.4, even though still alkaline, means that the plants have a little bit more access to the nutrients that are in the soil than if it's higher pH. Let's see, organic matter, 5.92%. That's pretty good. You don't want a huge amount, like you don't want 50% organic matter. That's way too much. 5 to 10% is pretty good. So I have some of the things that, I'm not going to read through every single one of these things, but I have very low sulfur, which is not surprising because elemental sulfur is what helps lower pH. And since I have high pH, it makes sense that there's not enough sulfur out there. So that's pretty easy to add. I do that here at my home garden all the time. Phosphorus, I have, but basically the number that I've got is good for flowering. And so I can add leaf mold biology to even make that better. My calcium, the magnesium, and the potassium are all excellent. They're all in the almost key range. Even more importantly, the ratio between calcium and magnesium in my soil out there is right where it needs to be. So that's really exciting. However, once again, the water out there is super, super hard, the water coming out of the well, and hard water can make it tough for plants to take up nutrients. So I have to still keep an eye on things out there because just because the soil has it in it doesn't mean the plant is able to access it. So you got to keep that in mind. I'm low on boron, which is very common. Lots and lots and lots of farmers deal with low boron. Low in manganese, low in copper, a little too high in zinc, and also a little too high in aluminum. Now, that soil was formed by volcanoes because there are ancient extinct volcanoes on the hills around me. So that probably has something to do, a lot to do with, or everything to do with the makeup of the soil here, especially when it comes to these metals. Yeah, so that is last year's results for that upper field. And I'm very excited to see what it says for this year up there. And then the information for the high tunnel is going to be brand new because I hadn't tested there before. It's really, really important to soil test in high tunnels, in-ground greenhouses, anywhere you're growing undercover, because without the rains that the ground would normally get, they tend to build up salts and other minerals to potentially toxic levels. So you really got to keep an eye on the soils in those tunnels, anywhere you're growing undercover. And a lot of folks I know do flushes through their irrigation systems. And also you can do literally take a hose in there and flush. However, you don't want to be doing that with, chemically treated water. So well water that I have out there is great to do that. That won't kill the biology in the soil. But even better will be to use rainwater and do just a soil flush where you just pour, rainwater in buckets over the tops of the beds, let that soak down. That'll kind of leach out some of the salts that build up in the soil as a result of being undercover and not getting rain. Those test results will tell me how I need to prepare those upper field beds, and what I can do, because when the spring stuff in the high tunnel is done, that's going to come out and summer stuff will go in, right? But in between those bed flips, I will be amending the soil. So having that soil test will tell me what I need to put on those beds before I plant my summer stuff to make sure that the summer stuff does well out there. So soil testing seems complicated, totally isn't. The rest of this week out there, I figured out what the irrigation issue is. It's not the well, it's not my irrigation system. It's the switch, the breaker that controls the well inside the box. So I need to have someone come out and put a new switch in for me. So I need to contact an electrician and have them come out and do that. Probably I could look online about how to do it myself, but I think I'm not comfortable with messing with electricity. I'll just pay someone to do that. Should the landlords pay for it? Oh yes, absolutely. Are they going to? No. So I'm just going to get that done so that I can have reliable water, because that's the problem. So what's happening is the breaker switch is it looks like it's on, but it's not all the way on. It's kind of toggling back and forth. You don't hear it, but when you're using the hose or when the water's trying to come through the irrigation system, it's on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And so you're getting these little flushes of water, and that does not work in a drip irrigation system where it depends on pressure to push water through all those little emitters, right? So that is a must that I have to take care of this week. Try to get somebody out there to fix that this week. Also this week, I need to start week 6 seeds, and you know what? The first round of sunflowers is getting started this week. Crazy, right? It's February. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you have any questions about soil tests or anything like that, drop a note in the comments. Not that I'm an expert, but I might be able to point you in the right direction. But definitely get a soil test. So by the way, with Logan Labs, and this is a normal price, it's $30 per test. So I'm sending in 3 tests. That's $90 plus, I don't know, $5 or whatever for the shipping. Is totally worth it. It's totally worth it. If you can know what's going on underground, where you're growing your soil to feed your plants, it is so worth it. Thanks again for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful time in your garden, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.